Hi there, welcome to another edition of Oakwood House Crafts and Woodworking. Today I want to show you the start of making a very simple coffee table. I deliberately just looked around in the garage and storage to see what I could find to make a coffee table. So what I got is actually a couple of pieces of this scaffolding wood. Right, it's been used from scaffolds and it's been a bit cracked. It's definitely quite weathered and seasoned. I've already made like a little boot stool out of it earlier, and I like the result. It really looked kind of rustic, and I just wanted to make that coffee table like kind of like a rustic piece, but still I want to include something you know, a little bit of a highlight of making it rather special. So what I figured that I would do is, we once got these tiles in as a sample for our flooring, and this tile was just lying around, and I figured by using this tile as using it for the top of the table, it would really make a nice piece. It's a lovely dark grey, and I think it would suit fine with a kind of old-fashioned weather rustic look on the table that I'm trying to achieve. So I just want to take you through a couple of pieces on what I'm going to do. So first of all, I've already been sawing up the piece of wood on my table saw to get like these two lengths here. Right, you see, like, might be a little bit cracked, but I don't care. That's going for that rustic look, and actually that it might look like that table's been around for 100 years, so you know, the more damage to it the better. We're going to take that weathering and use it to our advantage to create that specific look. So there's a couple of things that I need to keep in mind. Is I actually want to have the granite slate lying into the wood and flush to the wood, and it's basically a border around it made of this wood, a frame if you like. So first thing that I would need to do is basically take that piece of tile and measure its thickness, and it's about 10 mils, right? So the first thing I want to do is, before I cut any sizes, I want to create a slot in there 10 mils deep, so it could rest in it. And by doing these slots first, I got a better idea on what the dimensions will be once the slate is fitted, and then like saw it to measure it. So 10 mils it is. I've already set up my little table router with a piece to take off the 10 mils on the side, and we'll see where we go from there. So I already set up my small router table, and I've fitted a piece in that has the height of the 10 mils that I measured on the tile head. I already set everything up, the guides in place, so it will go through it. And we're going to go do a first run. So now I just need to plug it in and make sure to be safe for the last bit. I'm going to be using this tool. Count your fingers when you start and when you end. Also, can create a bit of dust, so I'm going to be a wimp and wear this dust mask. If you spend as much time in the garage as me, cutting wood, sawing wood, turning wood, you get an awful lot of dust inside, and that's going to give you a very bad cough. So I'd rather be a wuss and hang on to these lungs I have, because they're still working fine and I want to keep them that way. So I'm going to do something very unsafe now, because the type of router I have has a switch that needs to be pressed. Of course, in a table router That is going to be not very handy if you would have to keep one hand on the machine and the other on your piece. You know, that's just waiting for trouble to start. So I actually tied the knob in with a rubber band. So the moment I put in the plug, it's gonna go starting. So yeah, it's not maybe the safest way, but it's you know, you gotta just compromise and work with the things you have. If anything goes wrong, well, what do I do then? I don't know. Step away from it and let it go crazy, I think. So we've got our slot in there. Okay, you see I have a little bit of spare here, but that's okay. I'm just going to peel that off. It's just like a millimeter or something. Alright. And that's okay if the tile sinks a little bit too far in, because we still need to sand this, and we can always sand the material down. So that's one piece finished. So just going to get rid of this. Right, and this is exactly the reason this kind of like broke off from here. This is exactly the reason why I don't already cut this to size. So if I do have a little mishap at the beginning of the end, it's okay, because those ends are going to be, you know, removed anyway. So that makes it a little bit more sense to do that way. Okay, so now we're going to do the second one. Now I did it quite slowly because my router is not exactly the most expensive one you could find. Still, it's not a bad one, but you don't want to overheat it. So I'm just going to unplug it. And let's see. Yeah, basically we've got the same result here. A little bit of an edge. That's fine. This can always be sanded away, so no problem. Alright. Well, my poor little router did survive, and don't mistake it, like, this is scaffolding wood. This is hard stuff. This is, it shouldn't bend, it shouldn't break. People's lives depend on it. You know, and that's why these scaffolding boards, they get discarded after so many years, because they're just not deemed safe enough anymore to carry weight, right? That doesn't mean that they've lost their use. And actually, this is the best wood you can get if you want to make some rustic furniture, because this is all pre-weathered for you. It's like, you know, nature has done its job for you. Any warping, any cracks, they're gonna be in there, all honest to see. And that's just the way it's, the wood turns out to be. So it's a good piece of wood. You know, it's just not safe enough to use for scaffolding anymore. So, after that piece done, we can get rid of the router now. So another thing that I like to do is, when I gather all this wood here, right, and this is all untreated wood, I gather it in this big box here, right, and I just sweep it up in here and collect it And I've got a compost heap right behind the garage here, right behind the workshop. So what I do is I mix it in with all the compost we have there, and it makes the compost nice and airy, and you know, it will be good for the ground, and it's a bit of basic recycling. So this doesn't need to have to go, you know, to be just make sure that, okay, the leaf can stay there. You know, waste not, want not. Alright, so still looking at these slots that I cut out. Still had a couple of bits of the rim in there, the extra millimeter of height. And what I'm just going to do is going to take Grandad's trusty wood chisel and just kind of plane it out. Just slightly. Use a little bit of hand power just to get rid of that little edge. Okay, there's still some here. There we go. Now these cracks, I'm not too worried about them. We'll deal with them as we finish it, because there is a little trick that I can use to fill these up. Right. But for now, we got our pieces together. Now we can get to the point of actually determining our lengths and our widths. I'm sure some of you say, like, well, you know, you could just measure up the tile and calculate from there. I just like to do it this way, because despite all good intentions, you know, your router could be just half a mil off and your whole plan falls out of the water. And then you have to end up sanding parts of the tile off, which I would not recommend. I'm thoroughly lazy. If there's a simpler way of doing it, I'll do it. So now we're going to have a look on how this sits. Actually, this sits pretty good. This sits better than I hoped. So what my plan is to cut these on the miter saw 45 degrees and then create pieces for the side. Well, it turns out that all my humming and hawing about the angle that I should set my miter saw turned out that, you know, I could have just stuck with 45 degrees, and we actually ended up with a really nice frame around the plate. So it fits snugly, it fits well. We're not done and finished with this. I want to give some extra support before we actually going to join these all together. Now for that purpose, what I want to do is I'm going to turn this around. Actually, what I'm going to do, just take these parts out. Give myself some room. I'll get my piece as flat as possible. I'm just getting rid of some spilled varnish. There we go. Okay, we've got a clean surface. We put this on. Okay, and what we do now is we reassemble all those pieces upside down. So now I've turned around a table with the stone on the bottom, because now I want to actually see how deep this is. So we take the old rustic calipers and it looks like this is about 48 mils. So what I want to do next is make 4 pieces. They'll fit in here, and there also will be where we're going to mount the legs. Now I just need to square this off. I want to actually have this squared, so probably just use the old bench saw to get this piece off and get it squared off. So just adjust this a little bit. There we go. Now we have these 4 blocks. We're going to fit in here, and what we're going to do is, before we incorporate them and turn them into the frame, this is actually where the legs are going to go into once we fabricate them. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a hole in there that's going to fit the mounting of the leg. Now we're going to do that on the lathe, and I'm going to be using a tool that I actually gotten some time ago. I never got to be using it, so which is this. This should make me a nice 35mm hole in there. Okay, so we're going to be taking this off. Put this out of the way. And we'll get our lathe.